What we're going to do is get a little more specific. We want to take a look at what projects are actually being proposed in the greater Houston region. And to help us understand that and where they stand right now and what the process of project development looks like, I would like to introduce Bill Aljoe of the National Energy Technology Laboratory, Gregory Dierkers of the Office of Clean Energy Demonstrations, and then joining us virtually is going to be Dr. Matt Tejada of the Environmental Protection Agency.
Yeah, I have a couple of slides to show you about what DOE is sponsoring and supporting in the Houston area. Yeah, this is good. Let me just tell you, I come from let's call it the transport and storage end of things as opposed to capture. That's what that's the sort of thing that's in my wheelhouse. And as Assistant Secretary Crabtree mentioned, over $12 billion being spent on carbon management. A little over $2 billion of which over the next 5 years is going to be spent on what we call the flagship program of carbon storage, which is Carbon Safe. It's an acronym, stands for Carbon Storage Assurance Facility Enterprise. The driving force being do it safely, and provide assurance that when we do carbon storage underground, that it is safe and it is secure. And it is a very methodical approach. It starts, we have it in 4 phases, although folks can get involved in any phase. Phase 1 is pretty much finished. That was identifying areas in the country where it looks as though storage would be the geology would accept storage and be able to keep it there permanently. Moving on to phases 2 and 3, we gradually learn more and more about what we call storage complexes. Drilling wells, doing tests, making sure that we can put carbon underground and it will stay there, and also looking at all the other risks that go along with it, assessing the area for potential for induced seismicity, staying away from areas where that might be most likely to occur, and look at ways that we're going to monitor the groundwater and protect the groundwater. All of it goes into site investigation. It is information collecting. You gradually reduce the uncertainties over phases 2 and phase 3 to finally you get to the point where, okay, I think I'm ready to design a storage complex that includes injection wells. It includes, if you're going to have a storage facility, you have to have a source for that carbon. Working with the sources in the local area, hopefully as local as possible, to provide carbon that you're going to store in your facility, and also getting all the permits from EPA that you would need to construct such a facility, and also doing all the engineering design studies for the pipelines, whatever other means of transport you're going to use to get from your source where the CO2 is captured to where your storage facility is. And since this is government funded, familiar with NEPA, the National Environmental Policy Act, all of the environmental aspects of all aspects of this storage project are examined closely. And this is, before I get into community engagement, that is one mechanism that for government-funded projects is very important, because it will be either an environmental assessment or an environmental impact statement, depending on the scale of the work, but it requires public involvement at many steps in the process. In essentially, the government agency makes a determination as to what's going to happen with this project and informs the public of these are what we see is going to be the environmental and human and social impacts. That's included as well, to both humans and wildlife for this project, and really all the things that are connected with this project. So that is one avenue of community engagement. I should mention that Carbon Safe the storage facilities we're talking about are not small. The scale of the problem we're dealing with is so big that we know we're going to have large-scale storage facilities. So that's one aspect of carbon safe, is there is a minimum of 50 million tons of storage over a 30-year period. That's sort of the benchmark for what we call a large-scale storage facility, and those are the kind of things that we're hoping to develop, or at least encourage the development of under carbon safe. And the other thing I should mention about DOE, these are not DOE-driven ideas. These are not DOE-driven, DOE is providing financial assistance. The ideas and the impetus come from the private sector and academia. The ideas, they all generally have a project team that involves academia, industry, and governmental agencies and NGOs that say this is a project that we would like to see go forward and do the really scientific work needed to get it going. Phase 4 is the actual construction of the facility. Now, we are not constructing or assisting with the construction of any facilities at this point, simply because they're not ready. No one has showed so far that they are ready to build a facility like this under the DOE Carbon Safe program. That hopefully will come in the future, but right now the projects we have are phases 2 and 3. And I won't talk about 3, 5 right now. I'm supposed to have 5 minutes. I just wanted to mention that there are approximately 20 phase 2 projects that have been selected and are just getting started across the United States. Another 15, we just announced 9 phase 2 and 7 phase 3 projects a couple of days ago. There were about 16 phase 3 projects that are just getting started right now, and it shows you around the United States where these are located. And not surprisingly, a lot of them are along the Texas coast, a lot of them in Illinois, Wyoming, North Dakota. Why is that? Well, that's where the good geology is. That is where there are both sources that can provide CO2 and geology that is the right depth and the right sealing mechanisms to keep it underground. And so that's where these large-scale facilities are being developed to start with. Again, I should mention, I'll talk when I focus on Houston. This is the Houston area. These triangles and all these symbols represent either a capture project, a storage facility project, or, and I'll mention in a minute, the blue line there is a proposed pipeline project that really runs a lot farther than what it shows here, about 600 miles going from Corpus Christi up to into Louisiana. But the thing I should mention about all of these projects, they all require community benefits plans, both as part of the proposal. We reviewed those community benefits plans. They were a part of the mechanism that we use to score and rank and choose these projects. But they were not always the best. So what happens is there's negotiations. And as a matter of fact, negotiations are still underway for, do I have a laser pointer? No, anyway, use a mouse. Yeah. Anyway, for 2 of these 3 green triangles, which are phase 3 projects in the Houston area, the awards haven't even been made yet. They were selected, but the awards haven't been made. And part of what is going on between selection and award is trying to improve the community benefits plans that were associated with the original proposals. They were ranked, scored, so okay, these are some of the weaknesses. And DOE is working with the recipients of these projects to make these community benefits plans as strong as possible. And not only that, we're monitoring them they will monitor them as they go on. We will have people tracking the milestones, saying, okay, we were going to do this, did you? And really following along to make sure that they execute the community benefits and community engagement that they said they were going to do. So it is part and parcel of all of these projects, whether they be point source capture, which are the funny-looking little symbols. There's a couple direct air capture projects, one in the Houston area and the one Project Cypress. Maybe the OSED representative will talk a little bit more about that one. But in all cases, community benefits and community engagement are a part and parcel of the process. And this is something that really didn't happen until recently, and it's because of all the awareness. I mean, That's why this meeting is occurring now. DOE is fully aware that that nothing happens without the input and the acceptance of the community. We're seeing it all over the country. Projects are getting stopped because the community wasn't engaged properly, and finally it will stop a project. So I guess that's about all I want to say for now. I think probably have taken 5 minutes. I will be around to answer any questions, but at that point, I'll turn it over to the next presenter.
Yeah. Hi, Matt. I think
Okay, thank you.
yes.
All right, I just wanted to make
Please
sure.
take the floor. Do you have slides to share? Anything you should be able to?
I don't. I just
Okay.
wanted to very briefly, because EPA obviously has an important but fairly specific role in this. And I think what most folks are going to be focused on in this huge makeup of everything that's going to happen, and going back to what my good friend Reverend Caldwell was mentioning earlier, trying to understand what in the world is going on, and to understand, well, where are the opportunities to engage in this process? What is it going to mean for my community? What is NEPA, and what are these plants and the pipeline and the permits that are involved is going to be incredibly complex. And complexity has never been the friend of transparency and accountability, especially for communities that have been dumped on and disinvested in for generations. But here we are with a really complex process. And I want to really lift up the fact that our colleagues over at DOE in these processes are advancing the work of community benefits to really try to make sure that as we move through these processes, we're really clear on who is going to benefit and who is not going to benefit, who is potentially going to lose through these processes. That is not something that is going to be painless. This is a pretty new area that a lot of us in government, in the private sector, and especially for folks at the community level, are wading into together in front of one another. It's why at EPA, the couple of the biggest areas that we have in this whole complex system of things that are going to happen is looking at, well, where do you put the stuff, right? At the end of the process, those injection wells that will be regulated under our Class 6 authority. So we have put out just over the last year, actually just a few months ago, most recently, we've put out specific guidance for environmental justice in this Class 6 program. And it doesn't do anything revolutionary, which again is why I really credit our colleagues at DOE for pushing on things like community benefits agreements. But what we're looking for in terms of environmental justice is kind of bread and butter environmental justice work. We want folks that apply for those Class 6 wells, those projects, we want them to use our tools. We want them to use things like EJ Screen so that they can find the communities that are impacted or potentially impacted and go out and talk to them. And to not just look right around where you think it might be on the fence line, but to think about all of the communities that might be impacted by those wells. Think about communities that are subsistence fishers or gatherers. Think about communities that have been on the land far before it was colonized and might still have traditional indigenous rights or reasons to be using that land, even if they don't live on it 365 days of the year. We want to make sure that there's enhanced public involvement in those processes to receive those permits for the injection wells, that they have to go beyond the meeting, right? That folks are really engaging with and supporting communities to fully engage in those public processes, because this is complex. And communities are going and rightfully deserve the support to understand what these different statutes are, what the potential impacts are going to be, how this technology is actually going to work so that they can meaningfully engage in the process. As that process is going on, We want folks to perform an actual environmental justice assessment, to pull together those things that are heard from the community, to look at and use and put on paper. Well, what data did you find? Who is living in these places? What impacts have they already been experiencing? And how will the impacts of your project then cumulatively add to that? And we want that to all be done transparently. There's no accountability in this. There's no accountability to who's going to win and who's going to lose if there's not transparency. And to me, one of the ultimate accountability tools is that transparency, so that the communities involved can see and know for themselves exactly what it is in black and white on the page. And then, of course, once all that has been done, to do everything we can to limit the impacts, to mitigate for them, and to plan and be ready for the worst case scenarios and how we're going to handle those scenarios in places that often lack even the most basic of means to deal with emergencies. So we've put that together in guidance for environmental justice permitting in these Class 6 wells. It's also the same stuff that we've been talking about and have put in writing for states seeking primacy, so that they would be the ones issuing those Class 6 permits, not EPA. Of course, y'all are in a place where that primacy is being sought. Texas, along with Louisiana, have applied to actually receive the authority to be the main permitter instead of EPA. There's only a handful of states that are doing that so far. There's only a couple of states that actually have that primacy thus far. But this is where EPA is trying within this process to shine as much light, as much transparency, and provide as much support as possible to communities to meaningfully engage in it, so that we can see down the road of what those potential negative impacts are going to be and plan for them and mitigate them and hopefully not have them impacting those communities that have already been impacted by so many other forms of pollution over time. That's going to be tough. Not going to, especially with y'all, the folks in the room, y'all know that. But that's why these meetings that y'all are at tonight and having these convenings and trying to get as much information and cooperation out there as possible, so that communities have every advantage and opportunity to take part in these processes and to have a better outcome for their communities from them. So thank y'all for having me here. I'm sorry I couldn't be there in person tonight. It's been a bit of a crazy week up here in Washington, D.C., as some folks might have followed, but hope to see folks in Houston again very soon.
Yeah.
Hello, everyone. My name is Greg Dierkers with the Office of Clean Energy Demonstrations. I wanted to spend a few minutes today talking about OCED and our programs around direct air capture. The Office of Clean Energy Demonstrations is a new area of DOE created a year and a half ago. Congress provided funding through the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law and Inflation Reduction Act to help fund clean energy demonstration projects, including carbon management projects. OCED funds up to 50% of the costs for a given project in order to deliver clean energy technology demonstration projects at scale in partnership with the private sector to accelerate deployment, market adoption, and the equitable transition to a decarbonized energy system. While OCED has a larger carbon capture portfolio, I'm here today to discuss direct air capture, or DAC, and preview a project selected for negotiation in Southeast Texas. You may be familiar with point source carbon capture, where CO2 is being captured as it's actively emitted from a smokestack or other source before it reaches the atmosphere. DAC technologies, on the other hand, are taking already emitted CO2 from the air. Direct air capture is not a form of point source capture. Rather, it seeks to address the carbon pollution that already exists in our atmosphere. OCED plans to develop 4 regional DAC hubs to capture carbon, and each one is aiming to store or utilize at least 1 million metric tons of CO2 annually from a facility or multiple interconnected facilities. In December of 2022, the DOE announced a $1.2 billion funding opportunity announcement for DAC hubs. We have 2 projects selected by DOE for award negotiations. The Southeast Texas DAC Hub is one of 2 selected. This slide shows a little bit of detail on the projects, including the 2 selected for award negotiations. This slide shows a map of the South Texas DAC Hub. I want to be clear that the project is expected to be located in Clyburn County, which is south of Corpus Christi, Texas. The South Texas DAC Hub aims to remove 1 million metric tons of CO2 annually with an associated saline geologic storage site. You will hear more about storage from others today. I want to mention that 1.5, a subsidiary of Occidental, will develop the South Texas DAC Hub to demonstrate the technical and commercial viability of DAC, as well as delivering economic, environmental, and social benefits to provide a model for the development of DAC hubs across the US and abroad. 1.5 has committed to furthering equity, justice, and quality job creation in the development of the South Texas DAC Hub through its community benefits plan. This slide summarizes some of the elements of community benefit plans. They include 4 elements. 1, community and labor engagement. 2nd is quality jobs and workforce development. The 3rd is diversity, equity, and inclusion and accessibility in the awardee's organization. And finally, Justice 40, which aims to ensure that 40% of a project's benefits flow to disadvantaged communities. You will hear more about community benefit plans later, but know that the project team plans meaningful engagement, including the creation of a community advisory board. This slide shows a generalized project timeline. I'd like to note that the project is in negotiation, and details here will be developed as the project moves forward. If the South Texas DAC Hub is awarded, the Office of Clean Energy Demonstrations will host an award workshop to develop and formalize the community input process. Thank you for your time and attention.
This question's for Matt. Primacy in Texas is usually not a good thing because our Texas environmental quality group has been more attuned with industrial needs as opposed to the community's needs. How much is EPA fighting to keep primacy as opposed to giving it to Texas?
You know how tough a question you're asking me, right?
And maybe if you can explain
So primacy is a process.
explain that.
Right?
Oh,
So it is-
sorry. Could you also just define what primacy is for anybody?
So primacy is, so the way that environmental regulation works, so this is exactly why people need help, right? It is so complicated. It was not designed for us regular human beings on Earth to understand what the hell is going on. So the entire environmental public health regulatory system was designed on purpose, where you have, the laws come out of Congress, EPA is the federal entity that then takes those laws and issues rules to kind of set the floor across the United States for what those laws mean in practice for those regulations. But then, generally speaking, the authority to implement those rules, to issue the permits to polluters to be able to pollute a certain amount into our environment is passed to the states. So for the Clean Air Act and the Safe Drinking Water Act and the Clean Water Act and almost all of the statutes are actually the implementing authority for them has been passed to the states. There's a few things where that's not the case. There's a lot of things with Superfund do not necessarily pass to the states. There's some states that for whatever reason have not actually adopted those authorities, like the state of Massachusetts for some reason has never taken on the Clean Water Act authority. So EPA still implements the Clean Water Act in the state of Massachusetts. But in the main, almost all of the statutes and the implementing regulations for them that we have crafted on a national level are then implemented by every state. That's why state agencies are typically pretty big, right? There's 15,000 people at EPA for the entire United States, right? You've got several thousand people at the TCEQ, just the TCEQ, just for the state of Texas, because they're in there actually issuing permits, and they're kind of the agency of first line enforcement and compliance. We back them up. We have oversight authority where we're supposed to, check on the state that it's implementing all these things effectively. So what is in question right now is with this, with the development of this industry and these technologies, it's coming into play with this part of the underground injection control program that if I'm going to get this wrong, everyone's going to laugh. That is part of the Safe Drinking Water Act. I believe it's part of CIDWA or the Clean Water Act. See, I think I just got that wrong. But all the UIC program, underground injection control program, is within one of those statutes. But it's an area that hasn't been used that much, this Class 6 authority. So what is happening now with the development of this industry is the states that are looking at the industry expanding in their states are looking at, well, should we take the primacy? Should we be the ones now that implement this within our state? Typically, that is something that industry has preferred to see happen for a lot of reasons that I'm not going to get into in the room. But one of the reasons I will is because industry doesn't want to go do business in Austin, but then also have to go up to Region 6 in Dallas and do a different piece of business for the same project up there. They just want to go, to one place to try to get all the business done for their project. The other thing that, frankly, from our experience, EPA isn't typically funded or set up to actually implement things like a permitting function. There was an instance in Texas about a decade ago where we had to start issuing CO2 permits for air pollution right after the endangerment finding. And Texas actually said, we don't want to do that. If to get your CO2 permits, you need to go up to Dallas. So EPA had to actually take a lot of folks off of different jobs and teach them how to be permit writers, and they were not permit engineers. And it was a really long process. It was not a very efficient process. And after a few years of that experience, folks finally, especially from the industrial community in Texas, was like, Texas, could you please just take this program, right? This really is not working, having EPA doing this one program. So that's what's at stake now with the UIC program. In terms of the primacy process, though, it is a process, right? This is laid out in our statutes. This is how the system of environmental health regulation was designed to function. When states want to take primacy of such an authority, and once they have done everything they need to take that authority and have applied and shown and be ready, then they receive the authority. And that is the situation we find ourselves in today.
Thanks, Matt. I think, like we said, we're not going to get all of our questions answered maybe as satisfactorily as we want because it's a process. I think that was a very helpful starting place, and we're going to keep coming back to all of these questions. But we are running behind on time. Did you have a... Oh.
Can we put the map back for local projects? We have a clarifying question on that map. Mm-hmm. So for sort of table setting of where projects are and are not, we just wanted to clarify where the projects listed on the map truly are. There we go. So for whoever wants to answer it, because I think two people referenced this, the Houston area DAC hub that's noted on here, that's the Kleberg County DAC. Okay, so that's not Houston, FYI. And then, I think it's important for these things to be correct in our community. That's in a very different community. And what facility is the Deer Park Energy Center and Chemical Complex located at? What facility is that? Does anybody know? So as advocates, we've been under the impression that there was a CCS hub coming to Baytown, not to Deer Park, and those are two different cities. So just some clarity in presentation, knowing the community. Maybe there is a Deer Park CCS project coming as well, but our understanding is that it's in Baytown, and those are two totally different cities.
Can't answer the exact question, but I think the yeah, like I said, I don't have the answer to the question, but the answer lies there is a person at NETL about the same who can provide that answer, because I am not involved with the points. These are clearly point source capture projects. Oh, okay, there we go. If I can get a hold of Ron Munson, yeah, I'll have the answer for you. Okay, I'll follow up as soon as I will follow up on this as soon as I find out. I know the people who made the map. I'll find out where they got their information, get this clarified for you, and get you an answer.
And just quickly, I have a map, and we can maybe put it up if we get a chance, just so you can see it. This is just for the DAC hub, Clyburn County, not Houston. I misspoke when I said that because it was in front of I was looking at it and I said it. I shouldn't have. It's not in Houston. It's Clyburn County. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yeah. So please, yeah. Let's if we can put that map up just to make sure that the visual record is corrected, and then we can talk more about it.
Yeah, we will get that map up as we are doing our kind of powwow.